There are nights when you lie still in the darkness, knowing you need to let go. Yet your heart keeps holding on to the very things that once hurt you. You ask yourself, why can't I let go? Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. We do not suffer because of others, but because the deepest wounds within us are demanding to be seen. This video will be a full hour of companionship, where you will learn the art of letting go through Carl Jung's perspective, not letting go as an escape, but letting go as a sacred ritual of returning to yourself. We will explore the unconscious mechanisms that keep you stuck, the repeating patterns, the fear of abandonment, and the buried parts of your shadow you have never dared to face. Let this voice guide you into the deepest landscape of your soul, where you no longer have to force anything, where letting go is not a loss, but the beginning of inner freedom. And when you're ready, we will begin. 1. Desire and the unconscious. Fate. The first thing Jung wants us to face is not the external world, but a quiet question every human being has carried within for a very long time. Do we truly possess free will, or are we merely reenacting old memories, old scripts, and faint calls from the unconscious that we mistake for our own choices? This is the opening question for the journey of letting go. But in the way Jung saw life, letting go is not stepping away from someone, but stepping inward toward yourself. Human beings often believe they are awake, aware of what they want, and fully conscious of what they are doing. But Jung saw something entirely different. He saw a thick fog, a mist made of unhealed wounds, buried memories, and repressed longings covering our minds. Within this fog, what we call decisions, freedom, or rationality are in truth only unconscious reactions, repeated so often that they feel familiar. Jung wrote a sentence that became a pillar of depth psychology. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is not merely an academic statement. It is a roadmap for the entire inner life. When we cannot see what is hidden inside us, we continue performing the same role without knowing it. Being led while thinking we are leading, repeating patterns while calling them destiny. When we do not make the unconscious conscious, we walk through our own lives like sleepwalkers. This is especially true when we speak about desire. Jung never saw desire, especially sexual desire, as something low or crude. On the contrary, he viewed it as the oldest language of the soul, an ancient calling that modern humans have tried to suffocate. Desire speaks to us about the need to connect, to be truly seen, to touch and be touched in the deepest parts of ourselves. Without it, we cannot create, cannot love, cannot feel alive. But when society, family, and religion teach us to repress, to be proper, to not feel too much, we begin to split ourselves in two. One part lives on the surface, stable, polite, socially acceptable. The other part, where the need to be loved, recognized, touched, and understood resides, is pushed into the dark. Jung called this the shadow, and in this darkness, desire becomes the force that shapes our unconscious fate. When pushed into the shadow, desire does not disappear. It simply changes shape. It becomes the wrong choices we keep making, the people we are obsessively drawn to, the relationships we repeat that hurt us, yet we cannot escape. It becomes the fear of abandonment, the unconscious clinging, the anxiety when we are ignored, the sense of suffocation when we feel unseen. It becomes what makes us think we are in love, when in truth it is the silent cry for healing from the wounded child within us. We think we are choosing someone, but in reality, our wounds are choosing for us. And that is why Jung said, "You will call it fate. We call it destiny, serendipity, soul connection." While our lives are simply following old patterns triggered by the parts of us we refuse to face. Yet desire, when understood correctly, is not the enemy. It is a signal. It is a message from the soul, from the dark place we have avoided for too long. It reveals what we fear, what we lack, what we yearn for, and most importantly, who we are when we are no longer pretending to be strong. That is why Jung emphasized that true healing does not begin with discipline or willpower, but with ruthless honesty with oneself. Facing the shadow does not make us weaker, it makes us whole. If the unconscious is where pain lives, then it is also where our deepest potential rises. Desire, when not made conscious, will control us. But when we dare to face it without judgment, without suppression, without fear, it becomes creative energy, vitality, and truth. Jung wrote in the Red Book, "The true leader is the one who follows his own shadow. The one who leads his life is not the one who avoids darkness, but the one brave enough to enter it. And to let go, truly let go, we must begin right there. We cannot let go if we do not know what we are still holding on to. We cannot walk away if we do not understand what in our past keeps pulling us back. We cannot move forward if we continue allowing the shadow to lead." Letting go, in Jung's vision, is never an act of escape. Letting go is looking into the unconscious and whispering, "I see you. I'm not running anymore." Only then do the things that once bound us, the obsession, the emotional addiction, the fear of silence, the ache of missing someone begin to soften. Not because they disappear, but because they no longer control us from the shadows. We step into the light of awareness, and we take back the steering wheel of our lives. That is letting go in its deepest sense, not leaving another person, but leaving behind the unconscious script that has imprisoned us for so many years. And it is precisely there that freedom begins. 2. Desire as the language of the soul, especially sexual desire. When we understand from the previous section that the unconscious quietly shapes our lives, sometimes more powerfully than any willpower, another natural question arises. What is it within the unconscious that carries enough weight to determine even our most intimate choices? Jung's answer was always clear. It is desire, and even more so, sexual desire. But to understand this, we must first set aside all the modern biases placed upon the word desire. In society, desire is often seen as a low, primitive instinct, something to control, regulate, or feel ashamed of. But for Carl Jung, desire does not belong to the lower parts of the human being. It belongs to the deepest part. Jung once wrote in CW8, "The libido is not just sexual energy. It is the psychic energy that makes us alive." Desire is not merely physical longing. It is the psychic energy that makes us alive. And because it is the energy of life, it is also the oldest language of the soul. Sexual desire, in its most primal essence, is not really about the body. It is about the longing to be truly seen, to be touched with presence, to be recognized by someone with whom the soul feels safe enough to open its doors. At this level, desire does not move outward, it moves inward. Desire is the mirror of the soul. If the previous section helped us recognize that the unconscious shapes our fate through repeating patterns, then this section helps us see what creates those patterns, the deepest need of the soul, the need for connection. We do not long for someone's body. We long for the feeling of being seen by them. We do not seek pleasure. We seek the reflection of our own soul in the other person's eyes. And when someone makes us feel a spark, the thing that trembles is not the body. It is a deep unconscious region, awakening and whispering. Something in this person touches a part of me I have hidden for too long. That is why, for Jung, desire is the voice of the parts we have buried, the abandoned inner children, the forgotten fears, the tender vulnerabilities we dared not show, the dreams we once had but let life bury. Desire awakens all of these, and if we are not conscious of them, we mistake this awakening for love. In truth, we are simply hoping someone else will heal the part of us we refuse to look at. When rejected, desire falls into the shadow. As Jung said in Aion, what you resist persists. What we fight against only becomes more persistent. When desire is rejected, when we do not allow ourselves to feel it, or when we are rejected by someone to whom we entrusted our soul, that energy does not disappear. It slips into the shadow, and from there, it begins to operate in distorted ways. What was once a longing for connection becomes obsession. What was once a wish for intimacy becomes fear of loss. What was once genuine emotion becomes inner conflict. Desire only wants acknowledgement, but when it is buried, it begins to sabotage everything we touch, exactly as Jung wrote in CW9AE, The Shadow. Sabotages your best intentions. And then we find ourselves holding on to people who cannot see us, pursuing relationships that leave us empty, clinging to tiny moments to fight off the fear of abandonment, not because we are weak, but because our desire, the voice of the soul, has been thrown into darkness and has become the silent guide of our actions. The emptiness nothing can fill. Not everyone who leaves creates a void. Only those we bonded with through wounds leave behind an abyss. Desire was drawn to them not because they were special, but because they touched the part of us that lacked the most. That is why, when they leave, we do not simply lose them, we lose the part of ourselves we placed in their hands. This emptiness cannot be filled by replacement, numbed by new relationships, or buried in work or distraction. Because we did not lose the other person, we lost the doorway into a region of the soul we entrusted to them. Jung understood this so deeply that he wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." The meeting of two souls is never merely coincidental. If a reaction occurs, both are transformed. And that transformation, whether healing or wounding, always leaves a mark. Sexual desire is a message, not a sentence. What Jung wants us to understand is this: desire does not make us weak. It is the rejection of desire that imprisons us, and especially sexual desire, something many cultures treat as taboo, is in fact the deepest layer of inner connection. It is the voice of a part of us we fear the most, the need to be loved without hiding. If we listen to desire, we will know what we lack. If we listen to desire, we will know what we are seeking. If we listen to desire, we will know which part of our past is begging to be healed. Connecting to the previous section, from unconscious fate to the language of the soul. If part 1 spoke about the unconscious fate, where repeating patterns lead us, then part 2 reveals the soul behind those patterns. We are not led by randomness. We are led by the parts of the soul that are trying to return to the light. Desire is an invitation, a signal, the gentle yet powerful language of the regions we have not dared to face. And when we dare to look at it without shame, without avoidance, without repression, desire no longer pulls us into destructive relationships. It becomes the deepest compass, guiding us toward the truth of who we are. Because, as Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Desire is the call inviting us to look within, to awaken. And true letting go begins only from the moment we dare to hear that call. 3. The shadow and the persona. Once we understand that desire is the secret language of the soul, the voice of the rejected parts, then the next step in Jung's inner journey is to look at the place where all those voices are imprisoned, the shadow. If desire is the message, then the shadow is the home of abandoned messages. And to push those voices down, humans must construct a parallel structure, the persona, the mask we wear to survive in society. If part 2 led us to recognize desire as an inner truth, then part 3 opens the space where that truth becomes concealed. But shadow and persona are not separate concepts. Jung saw them as two sides of the same coin. In Aion, he wrote, "The persona is a complicated system of relations between the individual and the world, but it is, in a sense, a mask. Persona, the mask society teaches us to wear from a very young age. We are taught to control ourselves, don't cry too much, don't demand, don't get angry, don't express real desires, don't be weak, don't be strange. And so we assemble an idealized image to survive a good child, a polite adult, an excellent employee, a pleasant lover, a considerate friend. This is the persona, a socially acceptable self. Not bad, not fake, just not the whole of who we are." In 2 essays on analytical psychology, Jung wrote, "The persona is what one is in public, a compromise between individual and society. It is a compromise, a part we sacrifice to belong. But what is the cost of belonging? The shadow, the residence of everything we fear in ourselves. The more we try to make ourselves beautiful, the more we must push the ugly fragments into the dark, the hidden desires, the suffocated anger, the old wounds we're afraid to speak of, the tender vulnerabilities we fear being judged for, the intimate longings we don't know how to articulate. All of it gets pushed downward into the shadow." Jung defined the shadow bluntly in Aion. The shadow is that hidden, repressed, for the most part, inferior and guilt-laden personality. The shadow is the hidden, repressed, inferior part in our own eyes. But it is not inferior. It is only rejected. And the unbreakable rule of psychology is this: whatever is rejected returns with greater force. Whatever we push down will find a way to rise. The crack between persona and shadow. On the surface, we think we're doing fine. We work well, behave politely, love appropriately, laugh convincingly. But sometimes, at night, we feel an emptiness we can't name. Or we explode in sudden anger. Or we crave something we know we shouldn't. Or we dream vivid, haunting dreams. Or we feel a magnetic pull towards someone inappropriate, unable to break free. That is when the crack between persona and shadow begins to widen. The perfect mask begins to fracture, and through its cracks, the shadow sends a signal. I am here. I need to be seen. Jung wrote a foundational sentence for all of analytical therapy. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. We do not grow by imagining ourselves as good. We grow by daring to face the dark. Repressed desire erupts when the persona becomes too strong, too rigid, too correct. The shadow must find indirect exits, and desire is the closest exit. We find ourselves dreaming more explicitly than usual, drawn to a stranger within seconds, feeling a spark with someone off limits, or acting impulsively and asking, why did I do that? It is not weakness. It is not wrongdoing. It is the shadow trying to come home. Because in the shadow, desire is not just longing. It is the part of us we abandoned, aliveness, truth, originality. When we repress too much, the shadow tries to rebalance through sudden behaviors, actions we call wrong, but which are simply the cries of our deepest unmet needs, the wrong love or a search for healing. When we are intensely attracted to someone we know is not right for us, it is rarely accidental. These wrong relationships are often manifestations of the shadow. We are pulled towards someone who can activate the parts we buried most deeply. We are not drawn to them. We are drawn to the parts of ourselves they awaken, and that is why such connections feel powerful, overwhelming, and hard to escape, not because they are destiny, but because they are lessons. In Psychology and Alchemy, Jung wrote, "The meeting with oneself is the most painful confrontation. Meeting ourselves, especially our darkness, is the most painful confrontation. Wrong love is simply a mirror. It shows the shadow at work. It shows the persona failing to hold. It shows that we must return to truth." Seamless link to part 2. If part 2 said desire is the language of the soul, then part 3 explains why the soul must speak that language, because we have worn the mask too long, because we have imprisoned our true self in the shadow, because we have lived in the persona so deeply, we forget who we are when the mask falls. Desire is only the alarm bell. The shadow is the root. Jung's message, no one grows by avoiding the dark. Jung never asked us to destroy the persona. He asked us to know we are wearing a mask. Only when we recognize the mask can we gather the courage to look behind it, the part we abandoned out of shame, fear of rejection, and longing to be loved. And from the moment we face the shadow, life begins to change. Desire becomes clearer. Emotional explosions lessen. Impulsiveness dissolves. We are no longer pulled into wrong loves, not because the shadow disappears, but because it no longer has to fight to be seen. This is the third step in the Jungian journey, from the unconscious to desire to the shadow, and finally, inner freedom. And we are still not at the end, because beyond the shadow lies the place where true healing begins. 4. The unconscious fate and the repetition of old wounds. Once we see the mask, persona we wear to survive, and the darkness shadow where we bury all desire, anger, and wounds, we begin to realize something even deeper. The parts we reject do not remain still. They find ways to return to our lives through repetition. If the shadow is the mechanism, then the unconscious fate is the script. Jung once said a famous sentence, not only about the unconscious, but about the cycles of human life. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In part 3, we saw the shadow sending signals through repressed desire, impulsive behaviors, and wrong loves. In part 4, we see the shadow rewriting our lives by recreating old circumstances. And that is when we confuse our wounds with destiny. We choose the same type of people, not because we are stupid, but because we are unconsciously drawn to familiar scenes. We often blame ourselves. Why do I keep loving the wrong people? Why do I repeat the same tragedy? Why do I run towards someone I already know is not good for me? But the truth does not lie in consciousness. It lies in the unconscious. Jung explained in Psychological Types, we are not what we know about ourselves. We are what the unconscious makes of us. We do not operate by what we know. We operate by what the unconscious demands we face. And the unconscious has only one tool to force us to confront the truth: repetition. Repetition is a message, not a punishment. We are not being punished for choosing the wrong people. We are simply following our unconscious destiny. A child who was abandoned will unconsciously seek those capable of abandoning them. A child who was unseen will seek people who never truly see them. A person raised on conditional love will be drawn to relationships that constantly make them prove their worth. Someone who was betrayed will be attracted to two-faced partners, even if they swear never to repeat that pattern. It is not that they want pain. The unconscious wants to finish an old story. In the Red Book, Jung wrote, all the things in our unconscious seek outward manifestation. Everything in the unconscious wants to surface. So do wounds. They recreate old contexts, so healing can finally happen. Why is the loop stronger than logic? Because logic lives in the present, but the unconscious lives in memory. And the unconscious always seeks what feels familiar, even when familiarity hurts. That is why we see strange behaviors. We fear abandonment, but choose distant partners. We crave peace, but fall for storms. We long for appreciation, but chase those who belittle us. It is not pain we love. It is the familiarity of the past. The past feels safer than the unknown present. We do not love the wrong person. We love the old wound. When we meet someone, the unconscious silently asks, does this person resemble the one who once hurt me? If the answer is yes, the loop begins. We do not love them because they are special. We love them because the wound within us chooses them to complete an unfinished story. In CW7, Jung wrote, what we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. What we refuse to face returns as destiny. The loop does not end with love. It ends with awareness. Many believe they must find the right person to escape the loop. But the truth is, the loop does not stop when we find the right partner. It stops when we recognize who we are in the story. When we awaken, old circumstances lose their pull. People who hurt us lose their charm. Red flags no longer get ignored. The journey of letting go begins here when we stop repeating. Why does the unconscious repeat wounds? For one reason: to heal, not to torture. A wound that is not faced remains frozen forever. It must reappear in the present so we can finally acknowledge what we have avoided, what we have not allowed ourselves to feel, what we have not forgiven, what we have not expressed, what we have not accepted. The loop is not the enemy, it is the teacher. When the loop becomes a mirror, in the previous part, the shadow sends signals through desire and dreams. In this part, the shadow sends signals through the people we meet and the relationships we create. Everyone who enters our lives is a mirror. Jung wrote in CW10, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Those who cause us pain are not bad people. They are the ones chosen by our unconscious to reflect what we have not yet seen. The loop ends only when we do what the unconscious wants heal, when we begin to look at the original wound, recognize the old pattern, understand the inner injury, accept the shadow within. Stop blaming, stop running. The loop dissolves. No fighting, no forcing, no resisting. We awaken, and the old script has no reason to continue. Seamless link with part 3, from shadow to unconscious destiny. If part 3 explored the nature of what we reject, part 4 explains how those parts run our lives. The shadow writes the script. The unconscious directs the play. We perform, believing we are in control. But the moment we begin to see the repeating patterns, the moment we recognize our shadow in those we love, and in the pain we endure, we step into the most important moment of the Jungian journey, the moment we reclaim the right to shape our own life. And in that moment, we step into the next stage of the journey, transforming energy from repeating wounds to inner freedom. The journey does not end at the loop. It begins the moment we realize we have been repeating for far too long. 5. Libido, eros, the sacred energy that must be transformed, not suppressed. When we understand the loop of the unconscious fate, the place where wounds repeat themselves in order to be healed, we begin to see more clearly what Jung always emphasized behind every pattern, every choice, every longing, and every pain. There is a deeper source of energy at work. That source is libido, or, in the broader sense Jung used, eros. If part 4 showed us that the unconscious recreates wounds to wake us up, then part 5 opens a more important question. What within us makes a wound so powerful? And the answer always returns to libido, the primordial life force Jung called the psychic energy of life. In CW8, Jung affirmed libido is psychic energy, not just sexual energy. Libido is not merely sexual desire. It is the soul energy that drives our entire existence. Eros, not a lower instinct, but the heartbeat of the soul. To understand Eros in Jung's sense, we must set aside all social preconceptions. Eros is not mere sexuality. Eros is the connecting force, the ability to bond, the drive to love. the life sap that keeps the human being from feeling hollow. We create because of Eros. We love because of Eros. We suffer because of Eros. We grow because of Eros. Jung saw Eros as one of the most sacred forces. In Psychological Types, he wrote Eros is a great mediator and connector. Eros is the glue that restores the disjointed parts of ourselves. When Eros flows in the right direction, we feel alive, meaningful, deeply connected to life. When it is blocked, Eros becomes a flame trapped in a cage, burning us from within. When Eros is repressed, energy turns into darkness. We often think depression, anxiety, addiction, and self-destructive behavior are signs of weakness. But in Jung's view, they are not weakness. They are imprisoned Eros. Someone who is depressed is often someone with great inner strength, but compressed. Someone who is addicted is often someone with abundant emotion, but without a place to pour it. Someone who self-destructs is often someone with blazing creative fire, but twisted in the dark. Jung once wrote in Symbols of Transformation, "What is not transformed is destroyed. What is not transformed destroys itself." Eros is the same. If it is not made conscious, it turns into shadow. If it is not freed, it becomes self-destruction. Those who suppress libido suffer the most. We are taught to control ourselves, to be moderate, to hold it down, to lock it away. And in the pursuit of strength, we suppress our own source of life. When libido is suppressed, it becomes anxiety. It becomes melancholy. It becomes obsession. It becomes addiction. It becomes impulses. It becomes wrong love. It becomes emptiness. It is not libido that causes these things. It is the suppression of libido. The nature of libido is creation, not destruction. Jung always saw libido as creative energy, in the archetypes and the collective unconscious. He wrote, "The creative process arises from the play of libido. Eros is a current. When it is allowed to flow, it produces art, life, courage, transformation, understanding, love. When it is blocked, it reverses direction and breaks us from within." Thus, healing in Jung's view is not repressing desire, but learning to transform the energy of desire into creativity, truth, expression, and healthy connection. Transforming Eros, the lesson of inner maturity. To transform Eros does not mean denying desire. On the contrary, it begins by looking directly into desire. We ask, what am I truly longing for? Where am I hurting? What makes me tremble this deeply? What in my past is begging to be released? Jung said in Modern Man, In Search of a Soul, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it. We cannot transform what we refuse to acknowledge. When libido is seen, it softens. When it is acknowledged, it balances itself. When it is integrated, it becomes strength." Eros is the doorway into the self. What makes Jung's theory extraordinary is that he did not view libido as an enemy. He saw libido as the pathway into the soul. Where libido is directed is where the soul is lacking. Where libido flares is where the wound lies. Where libido is suppressed is where we lost ourselves. Thus, understanding libido is not about controlling ourselves. It is about knowing ourselves more deeply. between part 4 and part 5 from repeating wounds to the core energy beneath them. If part 4 showed us wounds repeating to be healed, then part 5 reveals the energy running beneath those loops. We repeat because libido is trapped in old patterns. We love the wrong people because Eros wants to heal itself. We suffer because our life force is being strangled. To escape the loop, we must free the energy. To free the energy, we must understand libido. This is why part 5 is the turning point of the Jungian journey, from awareness to transformation. When libido is integrated, life begins to blossom. Once libido is no longer imprisoned, we begin to feel more creative, more peaceful, less dependent on others' emotions, more connected without clinging, more authentic without fear of judgment. Eros becomes the engine of action. Authenticity, courage, wholeness, life's meaning. This is why Jung believed healing is not a journey of repression, but a journey of alchemy freeing energy, so it becomes light instead of darkness. As Jung wrote in The Practice of Psychotherapy, the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, only outgrown. We do not solve libido. We grow beyond the old self, so Eros can flow in an entirely new way. And from here, we step into the next part of the journey, inner freedom and responsibility toward our true being. 6. Inner freedom and taking responsibility for one's own desire. When we understand that Eros, the life force, can only become light when transformed, not suppressed, a natural question arises: who is responsible for directing that energy? Jung's answer is never easy to accept, because it leaves us no one to blame, no one to accuse, no place to hide. If part 5 leads us to recognize libido as the sacred power of the soul, then part 6 forces us to face a deeper truth. Only we are responsible for how that energy is used, distorted, or liberated. In The Undiscovered Self, Jung wrote, "Freedom of the mind is not a gift. It is a consequence of inner responsibility. Freedom is not about control. It is about acknowledgement. Freedom does not come from control. It comes from recognition." We grow up in a world that teaches us to control everything. Control emotions, control desires, control self-image, control what we allow ourselves to feel. But Jung saw the opposite. The more we try to control, the more we lose freedom. True freedom does not come from tightening ourselves, but from looking into the darkness and saying, "I am responsible for this." We cannot heal anything if we still believe the cause lies outside us. Jung wrote in Modern Man, In Search of a Soul, "We cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. We cannot change what we refuse to accept. Judgment does not free, it suppresses. Responsibility begins when we stop blaming. We spend years blaming parents for hurting us, society for pressuring us, religion for teaching shame, others for causing pain, the past for breaking us. But Jung is clear. Those things may explain us, but they do not determine our future. As long as we blame, we remain victims, and our libido stays trapped in the dark. What Jung wants is a shift from victim of history to guide of one's own soul. It is not your parents who still hurt you. It is not the past lover who still empties you. It is not society that still frightens you. It is you who continues to suppress the wounded parts within. And it is you who can free them. Only two choices: integrate or be devoured. Jung was brutally honest about desire and the shadow. Either we integrate them or they devour us. In Ion, he wrote, "To confront a person with his shadow is to show him his own light." This means, if we do not take responsibility for our desires, hunger, wounds, and longings, they will control us from within. If we do not make libido conscious, libido will operate through its lowest instincts. If we do not bring the shadow to light, the shadow will choreograph our entire existence. How long can we wear a perfect mask? How long can we suppress what trembles inside? How long can we bury our true longing and pain? None of it disappears. It merely changes form. Those who integrate their darkness cannot be controlled by society. Jung dropped a bombshell in the archetypes and the collective unconscious. The most dangerous person is the one who has nothing left to hide from himself. Because someone who has faced their shadow cannot be manipulated by shame, cannot be controlled by fear, cannot be ruled by old wounds, and society can only control those who fear themselves. A person who has integrated their darkness is not controlled by the need to be loved, is not manipulated by fear of abandonment, is not deceived by false approval, does not live by others' expectations, does not cling to anyone to fill inner emptiness. They become free in a way society does not know how to handle. Not dependent, not fearful, not easily directed, not blindly obedient. Jung said something many lack the courage to hear. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And to become who we truly are, we must walk through our own darkness. Inner freedom begins with touching your own desire. Desire is not evil. It is simply the first voice of the part that lost its voice. When we listen to our desire with honesty, without judgment, without shame, we begin to understand what we truly need, what we truly lack, what we have sacrificed, what we are compensating for, what we are running from. Inner freedom begins when we stop avoiding those truths. Connecting to Part 5, from energy to liberation. If Part 5 teaches that libido is sacred energy seeking release, then Part 6 asks the deeper question: who opens the door? Not the former lover, not the parents, not society, no one else, only us. Freedom does not come from controlling libido. Freedom comes from understanding libido, accepting libido, integrating libido. Responsibility is not a burden, it is liberation. Taking responsibility for desire means we no longer let repressed longing control us from the shadows. We look directly at it. We understand it. We transform it into creativity, truth, courage, healthy connection, meaningful living. And the moment we take responsibility, the loop stops. The darkness softens. Desire becomes light. Eros becomes a guide. Inner freedom, the thing we searched for in others, returns to where it always belonged, within ourselves. And this is Jung's invitation as we move to the next chapter, entering the fear of abandonment, the greatest doorway into the darkness. 7. Rejection and the fear of abandonment as the doorway into the dark. When we finally look honestly at our own desire, and take responsibility for the ways we suppress or transform it. The inner journey does not stop there, because what hurts libido the most is not unreturned longing, but the feeling of being rejected, abandoned, or deemed not enough. If Part 6 helps us see that inner freedom begins with responsibility, then Part 7 takes us deeper into the most primal fear of the human psyche, the fear of abandonment. This is the doorway into the shadow, where the deepest wounds around self-worth are hidden. No one escapes rejection in life, but not everyone understands it. The fear of rejection touches the wound of self-worth. Rejection hurts not simply because we lose someone. It hurts because it awakens the old doubts about ourselves, the ones we buried in childhood. When someone leaves us, turns away from us, goes silent, or chooses someone else over us, we don't just lose them. We lose the version of ourselves we believed we were in their eyes, in the undiscovered self. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Rejection activates the deepest loneliness, the loneliness of having the most important part of us go unseen. Rejection is a mirror of the part we do not value in ourselves. Jung had a perspective that unsettles many. Every rejection we experience is a mirror reflecting what we are rejecting inside ourselves. In CW10, he wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Likewise, every pain we feel when rejected leads us to the part we have not yet learned to love. If we fear abandonment, it means we have not learned to stop abandoning ourselves. If we fear being belittled, it means we still belittle ourselves. If we fear not being chosen, it means we have not chosen ourselves in a very long time. Rejection does not tell us who the other person is. It tells us what we are missing within ourselves. It is the mirror reflecting the fracture inside, so we can look, see, and heal. Rejection is not failure. It is a message from the unconscious. In Jung's perspective, every intense emotional event is the unconscious speaking. Rejection strikes so deeply because it is an inner signal from the part we abandoned. It asks us, why did you give someone else the power to define your worth? Why do you think being rejected means you are less valuable? Why do you define yourself through another's gaze? What emptiness are you asking someone else to fill? Rejection is not an ending. It is the beginning of self-understanding, the fear of abandonment, the direct doorway into the shadow. If we have the courage to go deeper into the pain of rejection, we will see the fear of abandonment is the core of the shadow. Almost everyone carries an abandoned inner child, not necessarily physically abandoned, but emotionally, a part that was ignored, misunderstood, compared, invalidated, or forced to be strong. Jung once wrote in Ion, "The shadow is a living part of the personality." The fear of abandonment is the most alive part of the shadow. It is still seeking someone to heal it, and therefore, every moment of rejection causes the shadow to rise to the surface, demanding to be heard. Society fears only one kind of person, the one who is not afraid of rejection. When we no longer fear rejection, we become someone society cannot easily control. Because someone who does not fear abandonment, does not cling to be loved, does not live for approval, does not conform to be accepted. does not betray themselves to keep someone, does not compromise their values for temporary warmth. In the archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and the person who accepts themselves completely, including their loneliness, their fear, their pain of rejection, is a person who cannot be controlled. Society prefers those who fear abandonment because they are easy to shape, but one who has made peace with their shadow is not. Rejection teaches what nothing else can: inner self-respect. When we change the way we read rejection, we step into a crucial phase of transformation, from dependence on external validation to building inner self-worth. We begin to realize, someone not choosing me, I'm not good enough. Someone leaving, I deserve abandonment. Someone not seeing me, I'm invisible. Someone not responding, I lack value. Rejection is the moment we learn to choose ourselves instead of asking others to choose us. Jung expressed this powerfully in the Red Book: "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Rejection pulls us away from the outer world, where we dream of being seen, and into the inner world, where we awaken. If Part 6 asks us to take responsibility for our desire, Part 7 asks us to face the deepest reason libido becomes distorted: the fear of abandonment. Libido is suppressed because we fear judgment. The shadow rises because we fear being seen in our vulnerability. The loop of wrong love repeats because we fear not being chosen. Desire becomes distorted because we fear the truth about ourselves. Responsibility is the first step. Facing the fear of abandonment is the key that unlocks the door. When we no longer fear rejection, we become free. This freedom is not coldness. It is the freedom of someone who knows their own worth and no longer places it in another's hands. Because at the deepest level, rejection says nothing about us. It only speaks about our journey, that we are walking into the darkness to find the light, that we are learning to see ourselves, that we are entering what Jung called individuation, becoming who we truly are. And from here, the journey leads us into the next part, clinging to those who do not value us, and the brutal truth of self-betrayal. 8. Clinging to those who do not value you, self-betrayal and emotional dependence. Once we have walked through the doorway of the fear of abandonment, the doorway that leads directly into the shadow, we begin to see a painful but universal pattern. We often do not love another person. We love the reflection of ourselves we see in their eyes. If Part 7 helped us understand that rejection mirrors the part of ourselves we have not learned to cherish, then Part 8 takes us into a deeper terrain. Why do we cling to people who never valued us in the first place? And the answer, through Jung's lens, always lies in the unconscious, in the part of us silenced long ago, in the inner child who was never fully loved. The biggest confusion, mistaking the fear of loneliness for love. Many people believe the ache, restlessness, panic, and desperation they feel when someone grows distant is intense love. But Jung would ask one piercing question: is that love, or is it fear? In CW7, Jung wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. Real love has no gripping, no forcing, no begging, no frantic chasing. If we must prove ourselves, run after someone, twist ourselves, or perform for affection, that is not love, it is fear. The fear of losing someone is not love. The fear of being alone is not love. The fear of not being chosen is not love. They are the unhealed wounds in us running in the wrong direction. Clinging is the cry of the abandoned part within us. Jung viewed the psyche as a system of personal and collective unconscious. Every intense, obsessive, or extreme behavior is never random. It is the reaction of what has been buried. When we cling to someone who does not value us, we are not clinging to them. We are clinging to the sense of safety we believe they represent. In Aion, Jung wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality." Meaning, the shadow does not simply hold negative feelings, it rewrites our entire behavior, especially in love. A person who clings is not weak. A person who clings is simply obeying the deepest wound in their psyche. Do not abandon me again. The problem is not that they don't love us, but that we don't love ourselves. We are hurt not because they are unkind. We are hurt because we accept their unkindness as natural as something we deserve. Someone who truly values themselves does not give another person the power to destroy them. In The Undiscovered Self, Jung wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem. We cannot expect others to cherish us when we have not yet learned to cherish ourselves. And when we cling to someone who cannot see our worth, we commit the most painful betrayal. We betray ourselves." Emotional dependence. When we become addicted to validation, clinging is not a choice. Clinging is a form of addiction. Addiction to warmth, approval, attention, messages, energy. We do not love them deeply. We are simply addicted to the feeling of being seen because we cannot see ourselves. In the Red Book, Jung wrote, "No one can know your worth unless you first know it yourself." When our self-worth depends on someone else's gaze, we will always be pulled back and forth by their emotional tides, like a boat without an anchor. We become anxious when they pull away, desperate when they are silent, euphoric when they pay attention, shattered when they are indifferent. This is not love. This is the soul losing its direction. Clinging to someone who does not value us is clinging to an illusion. We are not in love with them. We are in love with the version of them we created in our imagination. A kinder version. A more attentive version. A version that cherishes us. A version that does not exist. We love their potential. We love who they might become. We love the day they finally change. We love the rare moments when they were gentle. But Jung warned, projection makes the whole world a replica of our own unknown face. When we do not know who we are, we project that emptiness onto others. Thus we fall in love with a mirage. Clinging to a mirage is the most brutal form of self-betrayal, because we are deceiving ourselves. Real love never makes you beg. Love is where we breathe freely, not where we suffocate. Love is where we are allowed to be ourselves, not where we fight to be seen. In CW17, Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." True love transforms us, but it transforms us upward, not downward. If someone makes us increasingly exhausted, diminished, broken, stripped of dignity and self-respect, that is not love. That is the final wound rising to the surface so we can finally see it. where Part 7 showed that the fear of rejection mirrors our self-worth. Part 8 shows what happens when we refuse to look into that mirror. We cling to those who do not value us, to fill the part of ourselves we never learned to value. Rejection is the signal. Clinging is the consequence. Self-betrayal is the final collapse. We are not afraid of losing them. We are afraid of losing the illusion of ourselves we placed in their hands. Letting go is not loss. It is the end of self-betrayal. When we finally see that we are clinging to an illusion, something within us shifts. We stop chasing. We stop asking, "Why don't they love me?" We stop begging for scraps of affection. We stop sacrificing ourselves to earn attention. We begin to ask a different question. Why did I ever believe I deserved this? And that is the beginning of inner self-respect. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." We cannot become who we truly are while clinging to someone who cannot see that person. And so the healing journey leads us onward into the next chapter, the emptiness after letting go, where the soul begins rebuilding itself from the ashes. 9. The void. After letting go, the necessary pain of individuation. When we finally recognize that clinging to someone who does not value us is simply a form of self-betrayal, and we gather enough courage to let go, we usually expect one thing: relief. We imagine that letting go equals freedom, but in truth, Jung revealed something entirely different. When we truly release someone, the first thing that appears is not freedom, but the void. A vast emptiness so overwhelming that it feels as if we have just lost ourselves. If Part 8 took us to the peak of heartbreak, realizing we betrayed ourselves by clinging to an illusion, then Part 9 brings us into the most important stage of the Jungian journey, entering the void. The place where the soul begins to be reborn. The void, the space where the soul withdraws to restructure itself. When we let go of someone who once occupied the center of our emotional world, the nervous system, the mind, the body, and the unconscious all step into a state Jung described as a creative chaos, a place where the old has died, but the new has not yet been born. In the Red Book, Jung wrote, "In the deepest darkness, there is the place where new life begins." The void is not loss. The void is the womb of rebirth. And yet, very few people can endure this phase. The loneliness, the hollowness, the breathless ache, the long empty nights, all of these tempt us to run back to the old person, the old cycle, the old familiarity. We believe we are returning because we still love them. But the truth is, we return to avoid the void that is required for growth. Why does the void hurt so much? Because when we let someone go, we do not only lose them, we lose the version of ourselves that we relied on them to create. A part of us dies, a part that became accustomed to being defined through someone else's eyes. A part that lived to be chosen, be loved, be validated. When that person is gone, that part disappears with them, and our soul collapses into the void, the space between two identities. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. The void is that pain. The void is the place where energy returns to you. When we love the wrong person, libido, the life energy becomes absorbed in the wrong direction. We give them our care, our emotions, our thoughts, our time, our body, our imagined future, our creativity, our self-respect. All of that energy leaves us and flows toward an illusion. Letting go means cutting that energy off, and suddenly it rushes back inward, returning to its source. But energy does not return gently. It returns forcefully, chaotic, primal, like a river breaking its banks. And we feel emptiness because the body and mind have forgotten how to hold their own energy. The void is not the enemy. It is the space where the self rebuilds. We often think, I'm too lonely. Something is missing. I can't function without them. I can't survive this emptiness. But Jung urged us to read reality differently. The void does not say we lack another person. The void says, this is where your soul begins reconstructing itself. In the archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung wrote, the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play of instinct. The void is where instinct awakens, where the soul restructures itself without being distorted by another person. The void is where you reclaim every piece of energy you lost. Slowly, we begin to rediscover the passions we abandoned, the hobbies we sacrificed, the friendships we neglected, the small dreams we buried, the connection to our own body we ignored. Everything returns, one quiet piece at a time. And then we realize letting go is not the end. It is returning yourself to yourself. In CW18, Jung affirmed, the self is not something one finds, it is something one creates. The self is not found in someone else. The self is built out of the void. The void is the first stage of individuation. Individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, is not about becoming stronger first. It begins with emptiness. Emptiness so that old pain can dissolve, old patterns can disintegrate, the old ego can die, desire can be transformed, the shadow can be confronted, the persona can be recognized, libido can return home. Individuation is not the journey of finding the right person. It is the journey of finding the true self after everything unfit has fallen away. Part 8 helped us see the harsh truth: clinging to someone who does not value us is self-betrayal. Part 9 shows what happens once we stop betraying ourselves. We enter the void. The void is the consequence of letting go, but also the opportunity within letting go. Where they used to stand, there is now space. And that space is not emptiness. It is fertile soil for a new self. The void is the beginning of freedom, not the end of love. We once thought we lost everything when we let go, but in the void, we come to understand we did not lose love. We did not lose worth. We did not lose ourselves. We only lost the person who took up the wrong space inside us. The void does not demand that we fill it. The void demands that we become, and that is the first step toward the next phase of the Jungian journey, where energy shifts, and the world begins responding to the transformation within us. Top of Form 10. When you stop chasing your energy shifts, and others begin to see you differently. When you pass through the void, that stage where the soul withdraws, painful yet necessary for restructuring something subtle, begins to unfold. It is not loud, not dramatic, not spectacular. It happens quietly, like a faint exhale. Inside the mind, you stop clinging. If part 9 was the moment you confronted the void, then part 10 is the moment you step into an entirely different energetic frequency, the frequency of someone who is whole. In the previous part, we learned that the emptiness after letting go is not a lack, but the space where your energy returns to you. And the moment that energy comes home, a transformation begins. You stop placing your worth in someone else's hands. The instant you reclaim your own energy, the shadow softens, and a new truth is revealed. You no longer need to chase anyone to feel enough. This is the natural transition from part 9 to part 10, when you stop running after others. The world rearranges itself. When you stop clinging, your energy shifts from lack to wholeness. Jung once wrote in the Red Book, "The greatest tragedy is to be enslaved by the needs of others." When we cling to someone, we unconsciously place our emotional survival in their hands, letting them define us, control us, lift us up, or tear us down. We live in the frequency of begging, fearing loss, fearing silence, fearing invisibility, fearing that we are not enough. This is the frequency of inadequacy. But when we stop chasing, stop proving, stop trying to be seen, a powerful inner shift occurs. Our energetic frequency moves into wholeness. We become calmer, steadier, less reactive, quieter, deeper. Our energy no longer rushes outward. It circulates inward, and there, it finds its center. This wholeness creates a natural magnetism that requires no effort. Why does stopping the chase make us more attractive? Not because we pretend to be cool, aloof, or independent. Not because of psychological tricks or attraction tactics. It is energetic physics. Carl Jung explained this in CW8 when describing unconscious dynamics. Whatever you resist persists. When you chase someone, you are resisting the truth that they are not choosing you, and that resistance warps your energy. When you let go, you stop resisting reality. You move with it. Your energy becomes clear, clean, and pure. People are drawn to clarity, not desperation. A person with whole energy does not beg for love. They become the place where others want to give love. This new magnetism is not manipulation. It is the natural consequence of emotional self-sovereignty. Because you have returned to yourself, you have reclaimed your energy, your worth, your self-respect. You no longer seek validation outside. You no longer throw your soul into someone else's hands. You no longer gamble your identity on someone else's gaze. Jung wrote in 2 essays on analytical psychology, "The most secure place for your soul is within yourself." When your soul no longer wanders, seeking shelter, others begin to feel the groundedness in your presence. You do not need to manipulate, you only need to be yourself. Why does the person who once undervalued you come back? Jung explains it clearly. When you cling, you send a signal. I need you to feel worthy. When you let go, the signal changes. I carry my own worth. And like every power structure, when control disappears, the other person's ego reacts. Not because they love you, not because they finally see your value, not because they regret. Jung explained this in Ion. People don't see you as you are. They see you as they need you to be. When you clung, you fulfilled their need for control, so they saw you as someone who needed them. When you stop clinging, they lose access to that familiar signal. Their ego feels out of control. They return to reclaim that feeling, not to reclaim you. This is why Jung warned, the ego seeks comfort, not truth. The return of an old lover is usually the ego returning for its drug supply, not the heart returning for love. When your frequency changes, you no longer fall back into old patterns. Another thing happens when you stop chasing. You see the old person differently. No more illusions, no more idealization, no more fantasy, no more if they change then. You finally see them as they truly are, not as you hoped they could become. And that is the clearest sign that your frequency has shifted. The old energy lived on illusions. The new energy lives on truth. Stopping the chase is not coldness. It is the return to your authentic self. When you stop clinging, you do not become cold or detached. On the contrary, you become warm, but with the warm steadiness of self-possession, not the frantic heat of fear. In memories, dreams, reflections, Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." You stop being a reaction to your wounds. You become the expression of your matured self. Your new frequency forces the world to recalibrate. When you change the way you see yourself, the world changes the way it sees you. Your new energy brings better relationships, people who respect and connect deeply, opportunities that align with your truth, and those who once overlooked you begin to fall out of resonance with you, not because you changed them, but because you changed frequencies, and the world simply mirrors that shift. Stopping the chase is the gateway to attracting healthy relationships. From here, the Jungian journey naturally leads to the next phase when you become whole. You begin attracting relationships that match your wholeness, because you have become the healthy version of yourself. And that opens the door to part 11. Attracting healthy relationships by becoming the healthy version of yourself. When we step into the stage of no longer chasing, when our energy shifts frequencies, when we stop running after others just to feel validated, something quiet begins to happen. We start seeing love with entirely new eyes. There is no more tension, no more fear, no more emotional hunger that once made us dependent. If part 10 showed us that we become magnetic when we stop trying to be loved, then part 11 takes us deeper. We attract healthy relationships only when our inner world becomes healthy. When we no longer cling, the world automatically adjusts the way it responds to us. But that is only the beginning. True transformation begins when we finally understand love is not about finding the right person. Love is about becoming the right person. A soul living in scarcity will unconsciously attract others who also live in scarcity, or those who exploit it. But a soul rooted in wholeness attracts people who share the same frequency: calm, mature, respectful, capable of loving without hurting. To love the right person, you must first become the right person. Jung made this clear in the relations between the ego and the unconscious. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. You cannot turn someone into the right person if your inner world is still filled with old patterns: fear of abandonment, clinging, low self-worth, addiction to validation, or fantasies. You cannot attract a mature partner if, inside, you are still a child searching for a mother in the form of a lover. You cannot ask someone to love you healthily if you love yourself in a broken way. The unhealthy version of you attracts unhealthy relationships. The whole version of you attracts those who know how to love in a whole way. Healthy love begins by healing the belief of scarcity. Many people fail in love not because they are unworthy, but because they carry a destructive belief. Love is scarce. I must fight for it. This belief makes us accept relationships that are one-sided, dismissive, painful, disrespectful, or require begging for crumbs of affection. But Jung wrote in the Red Book, "What you run from becomes your shadow." When you run from loneliness, that fear becomes your shadow, and it leads you into relationships that make you even lonelier. Healing begins by changing the fundamental belief. Love is not scarce. I do not need to sacrifice myself to receive it. Learning to be alone and still feel whole is the soul's greatest initiation. Jung considered the ability to stand alone as a mark of inner maturity. In memories, dreams, reflections, he wrote, "Solitude is the salt of personhood. Being alone is not emptiness. Being alone is where we hear the unconscious most clearly. Being alone is where we learn unconditional self-love. Being alone is where we rebuild our worth. Being alone is where we reconstruct what has collapsed inside us. When you can be alone and still feel whole, you will not choose relationships out of fear. You choose from fullness. You choose from clarity. You choose from self-respect, from fullness. You begin to recognize the signs of healthy love. At this stage, you start noticing things you never saw before. Healthy love brings peace, not chaos. No more battles, games, or days filled with anxiety about being abandoned. The energy becomes calm, warm, deep. Healthy love has respect, not just verbal respect, but respect for needs, boundaries, and personal space. Healthy love is reciprocal. No more one person giving 10 parts while the other gives none. Both move toward each other. No chasing, no running. Healthy love does not require you to beg for worth. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to perform your value. You don't need to struggle to be loved. Healthy energy automatically filters out those who cannot stay in the frequency of your wholeness. You attract what you have become. In CW 9I, Jung wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Love is a map that reflects the heart. We do not attract what we want. We attract what we are. If you want peaceful love, become peaceful. If you want respect, become someone who respects yourself. If you want someone willing to try, become someone who knows how to try. No healthy relationship can survive if you are not healthy with yourself. You do not need to find the right person. The right person recognizes you when you become whole. Jung did not believe in hunting for love. He believed in inner frequency. When your inner frequency changes, the right people are drawn to you. The wrong people fade away. Ambiguous relationships dissolve. Those who once exploited you lose their grip, because the right person is never intimidated by your strength. The wrong person disappears the moment you become whole, a seamless opening into the final part. Jung's legacy: love, the unconscious, and the invitation to live authentically. When we understand that healthy love begins with becoming the healthy version of ourselves. The Jungian journey brings us to its final chapter, the deep interior of the soul, the unconscious, archetypes, dreams, synchronicity, and the invitation to live truthfully. And that leads us directly into part 12. 12. Jung's journey, the shadow. Dreams, the collective unconscious, and the invitation to live authentically. When we finally understand that healthy love begins with the health of our inner world, we touch a greater truth. Every relationship, every wound, every attraction, every fear is only a fragment of the journey back to ourselves. If part 11 showed us that what we attract is always a mirror of our inner state, then part 12 opens the entire Jungian universe, a spiritual, mystical map of the human soul that Jung dedicated his entire life to decoding. From healthy love to the deepest truth of who we are. Once we begin to love in a healthier way, we discover something many people never realize. Love is only a doorway. The real journey is the process of becoming oneself, individuation. Jung never viewed love, success, or suffering as isolated events. He saw them as signs, as symbols, as messages from the unconscious, inviting us to travel deeper into our own soul. Because to Jung, life is not random. Life is a quiet dialogue between us and the unconscious, the shadow, where everything we fear lives, and where our strength lives too. No Jungian journey begins anywhere but in the dark. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the treasure chest, buried beneath everything we refuse to face. In Ion, Jung wrote the famous line, "In the shadow lurks the possibility of renewal." Everything we are ashamed of, deny, or hide, fear, desire, anger, wounds, lives in the shadow. But it is precisely from these abandoned parts that the light of maturity is born. When we dare to look directly at the darkness, we do not become darker, we become whole. Dreams, the primal language of the soul. No one understood dreams like Jung. He saw dreams not as nighttime illusions, but as letters sent by the unconscious, a place where the soul speaks in symbols, in man and his symbols. Jung wrote, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." Dreams are the small doorway into the inner sanctuary of the psyche. We dream of people we want to forget, things that frighten us, memories we resist because the unconscious is trying to speak. Dreams reveal what we deny, what we haven't healed, what we secretly long for but refuse to admit, and what the soul is inviting us to become. Dreams are the roadmap of individuation, the collective unconscious, where our soul meets the soul of humanity, beyond the personal unconscious, where our individual memories and wounds reside. Jung discovered a deeper layer, the collective unconscious. This is where the universal archetypes live, ancient patterns that appear across all cultures and eras. The mother, the father, the shadow, the self, the hero, the lover, the wise old man, the trickster. In ZW 9I, Jung wrote, "Archetypes are the living system of reactions and aptitudes that determine the individual's life in invisible ways." Meaning archetypes quietly shape our lives. We are living stories far older than ourselves. We do not love only from the present. We love through the mythologies of thousands of years of culture, ancestry, and human history. We do not suffer only from our personal pain. We suffer through symbols humanity has carried for centuries. Understanding the collective unconscious explains why the same kind of people appear, the same wounds repeat, and the same dreams return. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. Jung called synchronicity and a causal connecting principle. In synchronicity and a causal connecting principle, he wrote, synchronicity is the coming together of inner and outer events in a way that cannot be explained by cause and effect. Outer events align with inner movements, but not through physical logic. They come as reminders, signs, answers, guideposts on our path. The more authentically we live, the more synchronicities appear, as if the universe itself is guiding us back to who we truly are. Rebirth, the resurrection of the self. In Jung's system, rebirth is not mystical fantasy. It happens every time an old part of us dies, so a new part can be born. When a scarcity belief collapses, we are reborn. When an emotional cycle ends, we are reborn. When we release someone who once consumed our energy, we are reborn. In Symbols of Transformation, Jung wrote, "There is no life without death, and no resurrection without descent into the darkness. There is no life without death. There is no rebirth without first descending into the dark." Individuation becoming oneself. Jung's concepts, the shadow, dreams, archetypes, synchronicity, rebirth, converge into one destination: individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming your true self, no longer controlled by the unconscious, no longer living through the persona, no longer repeating old patterns. In the development of personality, Jung wrote, "Individuation is the process by which a person becomes a psychological individual, a separate, indivisible unity. It is the moment we stop living for illusions, stop living to be loved, stop living to be chosen, and begin living according to the truth of our soul." Life as a series of lessons. Problems are messages, people are mirrors. Understanding Jung's universe changes how we see the world. Problems are not enemies, they are messages. People who hurt us are not accidents, they are mirrors of the unconscious. The dark is not frightening, it is raw energy awaiting activation. Life is no longer chaos to avoid, it is language to decode. The invitation to live authentically. Jung always ends here, throughout all his works. Jung never urged us to become perfect. He urged only one thing: become real. In the Red Book, he wrote the iconic line, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The greatest privilege of life is to become yourself." And that is the final message of this entire journey. Look into the darkness. Listen to your dreams. Trust synchronicity. Walk through rebirth and move toward individuation. In the end, Jung invites us to do something very small, yet profoundly true. Take one step, but let it be toward your authentic self. And when you do, you become a quiet light for those who follow not through your words, but through your presence. If you felt the depth and truth of this journey, leave a like as a way of sending positive energy our way. And don't forget to subscribe to continue exploring these inner spiritual expeditions, where every dream, every reflection, and every breath becomes a doorway to your inner world. Because understanding Jung is not merely understanding psychology, it is understanding the soul of humanity.